He always does.
He charges forward like a bull, drags opponents down faster than an anchor hitting the ocean floor, and once he gets a hold of them, they can't shake him off even with a crowbar. Khamzat is arguably the scariest, most dominant fighter in the UFC today, and the way he puts on wrestling clinics against his foes makes it safe to say he's the best wrestler the sport has seen since Khabib. But how can someone make elite fighters look like amateurs by relying primarily on wrestling? Isn't the UFC the pinnacle of MMA, where possessing well-rounded skills is a must and striking is as crucial as grappling? So what's behind Khamzat's secret that helps him climb to the top of the MMA food chain? We decided to recall how Boz played with his enemies' lives all the way to the top and analyze how this Chechen warrior dominates everyone with just his wrestling toolbox. To understand Khamzat's secret weapon better and analyze what makes him different from the other MMA wrestlers, let's first revisit his career moments. After ragdolling 23 opponents on the wrestling mats in Sweden, Khamzat chose a more lucrative option and switched his focus to MMA. When he made his MMA debut on May 16, 2018, it was like throwing a shark into a fish tank. The Russian Chechen warrior easily dispatched his first 4 opponents before he was matched against the first serious challenge of his career, Ikram Aliskerov. Ikram wasn't your average bloke. He was a 4-time world champion in combat sambo, and when he was set to lock horns with Khamzat on April 19, 2019, he was riding on an undefeated 8-0 record. The two action fighters put their flawless records on the line, and someone's zero got to go. Boz opened the hunting season with a jab that dropped the adversary momentarily, and then he glued to the opponent in an attempt to take him down for a mauling session. Although Khamzat is undefeated as a wrestler, taking down a combat sambo world champion was a hard nut to crack. The Chechen Wolf had no problem changing gear and switching to his striking. As the foe attempted to throw a jab, Khamzat countered it with an uppercut from hell that sent Aliskerov straight to La La Land. This flawless performance granted Khamzat a ticket to his next fight, which took place in his future home, Abu Dhabi. Next on his hit list was Mzwandile Hlongwa, a dangerous South African finisher with dynamites in his fists. The Russian Chechen Wolf wasted no time on the appetizers and went straight to the main course, quickly taking the opponent down. From there on, he turned on the ground and pound shredder as usual. Khamzat's ground control was stickier than a honey-covered bear hug. The mat became his domain, and he ruled it like a tyrant. Seconds into the second round, Boz subjected the unlucky fella to gravity shock treatment and demonstrated the Chechen tradition of bride kidnapping right in the cage. After making a few adjustments on the ground, Khamzat finished the masterclass by applying an airtight strangle. The adversary refused to tap, so he went to sleep early that night. After going 6-0 in the local leagues, Boz attracted the interest of the big league and was subsequently signed with the UFC. The Chechen Wolf made his promotional debut on July 16, 2020 against John Phillips, a dangerous slugger with 20 of his 22 victories won by knockout. On the feet with Phillips, so he slammed him to the canvas like he was laying down a rug, giving him space to breathe. John managed to hear the bell signaling the end of the first round. Boz bulldozed his opponent to the mat like a demolition crew on overtime. Out of desperation, the foe laid his head on the chopping block, and when Khamzat started cutting off the oxygen supplies, it was GG. Well played. Boz's UFC debut went splendidly, earning him his first performance of the night bonus. But what he did next was something that no other UFC fighter had managed to do before him. Khamzat was as active as a squirrel on double espresso and accepted another bout with only 10 days notice. Standing across from him was Rhys McKee, a slick finisher who rarely leaves it to the judge's hands. The way Boz carried the unlucky fella in his hands, one would assume he was weightless. And once they hit the floor, there was no escape. Once Boz got a hold, it was like getting stuck in cement. The Chechen fighter was a pit bull on the floor, tearing the opponent apart with strikes. After watching this one-sided pounding where Khamzat was the one swinging the hammer, the referee jumped in to stop the torture seminar 3 minutes into the first round. With this victory, the Russian Chechen powerhouse set a new UFC record for the quickest back-to-back wins in modern history, just 10 days apart. Khamzat was hungry for more, so in less than 2 months, the UFC matchmakers decide to throw him to the wolves by locking him in a cage against Gerald Meerschaert, a battle-tested UFC vet and a high-level BJJ black belt. While this seemed like a big step in competition for the prospect, Boers was eager to prove that he was ready to throw hands with the best fighters in the world. Being too focused on the upcoming takedown, the American put his guard down for a second, expecting Khamzat to shoot. Boers saw the opening and launched a nuclear left that sent the opponent straight to oblivion. The whole spectacle lasted for 17 seconds, where Khamzat won his third consecutive performance of the night bonus. A statement was made, and Khamzat sent a very clear message to everyone that he wouldn't stop until they wrapped the belt around his waist. The heavy-hitting Chechen returned to action on 30 October 2021 to face Li Jingliang, who was coming off a brutal KO victory against Santiago Ponzinibbio. Khamzat launched an assault like a general, leading an invasion. And moments later, the audience witnessed arguably the biggest gangster moment in UFC history. Boers took his time to chat with the UFC boss, Dana White. All that while holding Li Jingliang in the air as if he were a feather. He then slammed the adversary on the canvas and proceeded to talk to Dana while mauling their unlucky opponent without remorse. Khamzat turned his opponent into a training dummy, hitting at will. He then took Li's back, turned into a human backpack, and locked in the submission like he had the key to his opponent's escape. Once the hand was under the chin, there was no way out. Only a few fighters did the unthinkable to talk to Dana White mid-fight. But chatting with the big boss while holding an elite killer in your hands was something that only a wrestling powerhouse like Khamzat could do. However, the first time Boers' chin got truly tested was the following year against Gilbert Burns, a multiple-time BJJ world champion with heavy hands. Khamzat initiated a brawl, and Burns gladly accepted it. And just like that, a merciless all-out war broke out. They went out there without bulletproof vests and helmets and decided to trade with dynamites on their feet. While Burns proved tougher than what Boers could anticipate, it didn't even matter, as the Chechen Wolf had a slight advantage in the artillery exchanges, so he was declared the winner. But the next bout against Kevin Holland wasn't nearly as competitive. Boers put on a wrestling clinic on the opponent, and it was like watching a lion drag its prey into the dirt. The Russian Chechen warrior dragged the foe into murky waters and drowned him, delighting the spectators for 2 minutes. Nobody has done that to Holland before, but as they say, there is a first time for everything. The following year, Khamzat was matched against Kamaru Usman, a former welterweight champion and one of the best pound-for-pound fighters in the world. To say that Usman's wrestling is at a high level is an understatement. He's known to utilize his grappling to neutralize the opponents and sure enough, promised to offer some resistance. But, as Daniel Cormier likes to say,
we both kind of agree on Khamzat Chimaev,
right? Khamzat Chimaev has that much power, that much skill to knock out someone like Kamaru Usman, who's been in there with the world's best at 170 pounds. I think that's a little bit presumptive.
There are levels to this game, and Usman wasn't on Khamzat's level that night. The Chechen Wolf occasionally implemented his wrestling to beat Kamaru in his own game. He controlled the foe for most of the fight, leaving no doubt who the main character was that night. After long battles against flu and sicknesses, Boers was finally back in the Octagon on 26 October 2024 to face Robert Whittaker, a former middleweight champion and one of the most well-rounded fighters on the roster. While some analysts thought that Bobby Knuckles might be the toughest matchup for Khamzat, the reality was quite different. Boers, business as usual, took the top contender with ease and applied a choke so tight that he broke his front teeth. The performance left the audience in shock and disbelief over what had just happened. While beating Whittaker wasn't out of the question, submitting him that early in the first round was something nobody could have anticipated. Once again, Boers showed the gap between himself and the other contenders, making a UFC title shot only a matter of time. And this leads to the question, how has a fighter relying primarily on wrestling managed to dominate everyone? To explain it best, we need to consider all the factors that contribute to Khamzat's superior wrestling, which remains a puzzle that no one has yet solved. First, It's one thing to be an exceptional wrestler like Yoel Romero, but incorporating wrestling into an MMA fight is a completely different skill. Khamzat has a high wrestling IQ and knows exactly how and when to unleash his unstoppable wrestling during a fight. While Olympic wrestlers like Dan Henderson and Yoel Romero are incredibly skilled, they didn't rely on their grappling as their primary weapon. MMA is a different game. It requires more than just knowing how to execute a takedown. Another factor is Khamzat's strength. He can shoot from almost any position, lift opponents into the air, and slam them down like a frustrated kid crushing his toy. This power comes from a mix of his natural genetics and the intense training he puts his body through every day. It's also worth noting that he's from Chechnya, a state in Russia where people value wrestling and combat sports as highly as Austrians value classical music. Growing up in such an environment where wrestling is almost a social expectation has had a huge impact on making Boz the wrestling powerhouse he is today. Another key aspect is Khamzat's ability to adapt mid-fight. He's evolving to a well-rounded fighter who can also threaten with knockouts on the feet. When he failed to secure a takedown against Aliskerov, he switched to striking and delivered an uppercut that turned out the lights. He showed similar striking power against Gilbert Burns. And when he fought Gerald Meerschaert, the American was so focused on defending takedowns that he forgot Khamzat's striking is as lethal as a Desert Eagle shot. Training with elite fighters like Alexander Gustafsson and Ilia Latifi has only sharpened his skills, and his wrestling pedigree from competing on the Swedish regional circuit further enhanced his grappling credentials. Overall, it's not just one factor. There are multiple reasons why Khamzat's wrestling is so dominant. The question remains, can anyone stop him? And what do you fight fans think about this? Do you believe Boz has what it takes to become the next dominant champion? Leave your thoughts in the comments and make sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.